From the road, a king's castle in 1200 looked almost unreal. High walls, armed men, towers over the countryside, banners over the gatehouse, a hall full of servants, horses in the stables, smoke rising from within the walls. It looked like power made solid. It also looked comfortable. That is the illusion. If you walked through the gatehouse and followed the king from dawn until night, the first thing you would notice would not be luxury. It would be cold. Cold stone underfoot, cold air in the chamber, cold water in the basin, smoke in the lungs, heavy wool on the body, eyes watching from every side. A king in a medieval castle had the best room, the best bed, the best food, and the highest authority in the kingdom. He also had almost no privacy, almost no silence, and almost no freedom to stop being king for even a single hour. He did not wake with a crown on his head. He woke in a room that had lost its heat during the night. He dressed with attendants standing close enough to touch him. He prayed before the day properly began. He ate in public. He judged in public. He worried in private. He slept behind curtains while guards waited just outside. This is what life was like for a king in a medieval castle in 1200. And why, if you exchanged lives with him, you probably would not last a day. We are going to spend a full day with him. We will wake in his chamber, walk through the chapel, sit in the great hall, watch his meals, follow his clerks and messengers, feel the pressure of his court, and end the night behind the guarded door of the royal chamber. This is not kingship as fantasy. It is kingship as routine, discomfort, ceremony, and exposure. Before the kingdom sees him, the castle is already awake. Outside the king's chamber, a guard stands in the passage with spear in hand. The torch on the wall has burned low. Somewhere below, in the kitchens, the first embers are being stirred into flame. In the stables, horses shift in straw. In the chapel, a clerk or chaplain may already be preparing for prayer. The day begins around the king before it begins for him. His chamber is the best in the castle, but it is still a stone room. The shutters leak thin lines of dawn. The fire in the hearth is weak after the night. Tapestries on the wall help with the draught, but only a little. The bed is raised, curtained, layered with linen, wool, and fur. By the standards of the age, it is luxurious. By modern standards, it is still a bed in a room designed more for status and security than for comfort. When the king wakes, he does not wake alone. Attendants enter almost immediately. One bends to the hearth, another opens a chest, another brings a basin, a jug, and cloths. Boots are placed where they can be stepped into quickly. Fresh linen is unfolded. A belt is laid across a chair. If the weather is cold, a heavier mantle is prepared. If the day may involve travel or tension, thicker layers wait nearby. The water in the basin is not warm enough to be pleasant. It has been carried by hand from below. Perhaps some has been heated, often not enough. He washes face and hands in water that would make a modern person pull back on instinct. The cloth is rough. The air around him is colder than the bed he has just left. Even the richest man in England begins his morning in a world without plumbing, without central heat, without privacy, and without the small comforts modern life teaches us to think of as basic. Then comes dressing. A king in 1200 does not throw on clothes casually. First linen against the skin, then hose, then a tunic or undertunic, then a better outer garment of dyed wool, belt, knife, shoes or boots, a mantle or cloak, better cloth than anyone else in the castle, better cut, better fastenings, better colour, but still heavy, still layered, still warm when it is summer, and not warm enough when it is winter. And there is one more thing most people imagine incorrectly. He is not sitting in his chamber all day with a crown on his head. Most days, the crown is absent. Royalty is shown through quality, through attendance, through space, through who stands and who kneels, through who speaks first, and who must wait. The king's body itself is part of the performance. His clothing must say what his crown does not. A servant opens the shutters wider. Weak morning light spreads across the chamber floor. For a moment the king sees the yard below. Smoke from the kitchen, a groom leading a horse, a guard on the wall walk. Then the shutters are adjusted again because light is useful, but so is warmth, and the two rarely coexist easily in a medieval stone room. Once dressed, he is rarely allowed to disappear into private ease. A chaplain may enter, a prayer may be said in the chamber, or the king may move through the corridor toward chapel with attendants ahead and behind, guards stepping aside, servants lowering their eyes as he passes. The chapel is small compared to later cathedrals, but within the castle it is one of the most important rooms. Candlelight, stone, a cross at the altar, a priest's voice in Latin, morning prayer before business, not because the king is at leisure, but because kingship in 1200 is supposed to rest on divine order. If he rules by God's permission, then the day begins by acknowledging God. Only after this does the world truly close around him. A small early bite may be taken in chamber or just after prayer. Bread, perhaps wine diluted with water, perhaps ale. Something light before the larger business of the day, but even this is not quiet in the modern sense. A cupbearer pours, a servant waits, a clerk may already be hovering with letters, a household officer may already be standing near the doorway, ready to start. And before the sun is properly up above the walls, the king has already been washed, dressed, watched, prayed over, and prepared for display. Most modern people would already be exhausted. The king's life is not difficult only because of the cold or the stone. It is difficult because he moves through the castle as the center of it. Every room changes when he enters. Every face arranges itself. Every silence means something. If you follow him from chamber to chapel to hall, you begin to see the machine around him. Closest are the chamber attendants, the men trusted with access to the king's body and private space. They know when to wake him, when to admit a visitor, when to refuse one, when to bring clothing, when to remove it, when to keep people back, and when to let them through. Behind them are the great officers of the household. The steward appears with lists, expenses, supplies, and practical decisions. He knows what is in store, what has been consumed, what must be purchased, what must be moved, what must be paid. The marshal belongs to the world of horses, transport, arms, and movement. He knows which horses are ready, which carts are loaded, which saddles need work, which roads are passable, which escort can move at short notice. The chaplain is never only a chaplain. He may pray with the king, but he may also write for him, interpret letters, draft orders, or read difficult passages aloud. In a world where literacy is concentrated in the church, a religious man can also be an administrative necessity. Then come the clerks. If you want to understand medieval kingship, look at the tables where ink dries. A clerk sits with parchment, wax, cord, and seals. Another warms wax over a flame. Another sorts folded documents already tied. A kingdom is ruled with voices, yes, but also with the physical movement of written commands. Every parchment in a clerk's hand may mean taxes, land, punishment, reward, exemption, protection, confiscation, or favor. And around all of this stands the armed layer of royal life, guards at doors, household knights moving through passages, sergeants stationed near the gatehouse, men on the wall walk, men near the stables, men in the yard. Not an army displayed all at once, but a constant low presence of steel, leather, wool, and alertness. The castle serves the king, but it also keeps him alive. And under that upper layer of power stretches the rest of the household. In the kitchen, cooks and bakers already work in heat that the king will rarely feel in full. In the brewhouse, ale is managed in large wooden vessels. In the laundry yard, fabric is beaten, scrubbed, wrung, and hung. In the stables, boys and grooms feed horses, fork straw, clean tack, and lead animals one by one into the yard. In the forge, iron rings under the hammer. In the corridors, rushes are swept, benches set, doors opened, doors closed, ash carried, water carried, food carried, messages carried. None of these people live as he lives. But his life cannot exist without theirs. You can see that dependence in the simplest moments. An usher clears a passage before him. A servant lifts a latch. A groom steadies a horse. A cupbearer waits with a cup already poured. A clerk bends over a table before the king has even sat down. Everywhere he goes, other hands have already prepared the next step. If the queen is present, the atmosphere grows more layered. She has her own attendants, her own rooms, her own influence. She may appear in chapel, at meal, or in more private conversation. People watch her face too. A queen can soften a room or sharpen it. She can be comfort, witness, ally, or pressure. Even royal children, if present, are not free in the modern sense. They are dressed carefully, taught posture early, watched by nurses, attendants, and anyone with ambitions tied to dynastic future. Their childhood is touched by ceremony from the start. To modernize all this service looks like privilege, and it is privilege. But it is also evidence that the king is never simply a man alone in his own home. He's always being approached, prepared, interpreted, or protected. You would feel this fastest, not in the hall, but in the doorway. You cannot open a door and wander unnoticed. You cannot sit somewhere because you like the light there. You cannot step into the yard without other people adjusting themselves around you. This is how the castle teaches you what kingship really is. Not private luxury, structured visibility. By the time the king enters the great hall for the main meal, the whole castle is already oriented around him. The hall is the largest room in the castle, and it is impressive. Long trestle tables, benches, a central space for movement, rushes on the floor, stone or timber walls darkened by smoke, a fireplace or hearth, giving heat to one area and leaving the rest of the room in varying degrees of cold. At the far end on the dais, the high table waits above everyone else. This is where kingship becomes public again. Before the first dish arrives, servants bring water in ewers and basins for ritual hand washing. Linen towels are offered. The sequence is controlled and visible. Even cleanliness is ceremonial when it happens close to the king. The king's food is the best in the castle. White bread from fine wheat flour rather than dark, coarse loaves. Better roasted meats, better fish, better cheese, wine if it is available, imported spices if the household is traveling richly enough, dishes made with more care than anything on the servants' benches. But the meal is not comfortable in the modern sense. People watch him eat. Servants move around him in sequence, dishes arrive in order, cups are filled by other hands, dogs move beneath the tables, smoke hangs above. The warmth of the fire does not reach every part of the hall. The stone under the dais is no softer than the stone elsewhere. If the room is crowded, the air grows thick with bodies, flame, food, wool, and damp. And nothing about the meal is casual. The king does not slump into his chair. He sits visibly. He receives service visibly. He speaks visibly. He notices who sits near, who waits far off, who has been admitted, who has not, who is called closer, who is left standing. Even if a dish tastes good, the meal is still work. A clerk may approach between courses. A messenger may be admitted. A bishop may request a private word. A noble may be seated close enough to speak quietly after the table clears. A petitioner may wait near the doorway. To eat as king is to remain accessible to power while performing it. And the room itself is still medieval. The smoke stings, the rushes smell. The window's slits admit light, but also drafts. Torches make the shadows worse as often as they make the room clearer. In winter, the hall reminds you that stone stores cold. In summer, the clothing reminds you that dignity can become its own form of heat. Even the best clothing is not modern comfort. Linen may feel clean at first. Then wool settles on top of it, belt around the waist, mantle on the shoulders, brooch or clasp. Better shoes than most men will ever own, but still hard, stitched and built for a rough world. A king looks rich because cloth is one of the languages of power. He does not necessarily feel at ease inside it, and if he needs the garderobe, even that carries the mark of the age. A royal latrine is still a latrine in a castle wall, a stone seat, a shaft below, cold air rising, no privacy like modern privacy, no sanitation like modern sanitation. Even at the top of society, bodily life remains close, physical, and inescapably medieval. Bathing is better than for most people, but still limited. A tub can be brought, water can be heated, towels and linen can be fresh, but a bath costs labor, fuel, time, and hands. It is not a daily private habit as modern people understand it. More often, there is washing in basins, wiping with cloths, changing of linen, grooming of beard and hair, care of hands, but never the complete separation from dirt that modern life assumes. Then there is smell. This matters because smell is one of the first things a modern person would fail to endure. Smoke in garments, wool holding damp, leather tack, dogs under tables, horses in nearby buildings, tallow from candles, food grease, bodies in layers of cloth, rushes on the floor, chamber pots, wet stone after rain. The castle is not filthy by medieval standards, it is maintained constantly. But maintenance is not cleanliness in the modern sense. It is control over a world that never stops trying to smell of itself. A king lives above that world. He does not live outside it. If this kind of reconstruction is something you value, subscribing to Walter Reconstructs History is the best way to make sure the next one happens. Every video takes weeks of research, writing, and production, and your subscription tells me that this work matters. If you have been watching this far, you already care about history done properly. That means a lot. Now, let us step into the work that filled the rest of the day. The modern fantasy says that kings gave orders and other men carried them out. The reality inside the castle is more exhausting. The king must sit, listen, judge, confirm, refuse, negotiate, remember, and repeat. In a chamber off the hall, or sometimes in the hall itself, clerks unfold documents before him. One reads a complaint from a religious house, another reads a report from a sheriff, another presents a charter that needs confirmation. Wax is warmed, a seal is brought. The king asks a question. A clerk looks to another clerk, a household officer adds context, a bishop speaks. A knight says little, but listens closely. The king decides. Then another case comes in, a tenant with a grievance, a lord with a request, a dispute over land boundaries, a question of inheritance, a complaint about unpaid dues, a favour asked in careful language, a reminder of military obligation, a report from a port, a whisper from a border region, a messenger fresh from the road, mud still drying on the hem of his cloak. A kingdom in 1200 does not exist as abstract machinery humming by itself. It arrives in rooms. It arrives as parchment-sealed letters, remembered promises, and faces standing before the king waiting for an answer. This is why the day drains him. He cannot be vague for long, too much depends on clarity, but he cannot be reckless either. Too much depends on restraint. If he speaks too sharply, men remember. If he delays too long, men grow restless. If he grants too much, he weakens himself. If he refuses too much, he creates enemies. If he favors one magnate too openly, another notices. If he ignores the church does not forget. If he appears weak, the whole room measures it. So even tone becomes work. You can imagine the scene. The king seated in a chair at a heavy table, candle stubs from earlier, fresh daylight struggling through narrow windows, a clerk reading, a steward waiting with figures in mind, a bishop motionless except for the hands, a knight beside the doorway, a servant entering silently with more wax, more parchment, more wine, more news, and this continues hour after hour. Sometimes the king leaves the room and the work follows him. He walks through the courtyard, men bow, a groom holds a horse. The marshal reports on travel readiness, the blacksmith's work rings from the forge. The king inspects a gate mechanism or glances toward the wall walk. Not because he's curious like a tourist, but because royal presence itself is part of order. To be seen moving through the castle is to remind the castle that he is there, watching. If weather allows, he may ride beyond the gate or hunt on nearby land, and even that is not free time, in the modern sense. The horse, the escort, the dogs, the falcons, the chosen rote, the people permitted near him, the eyes watching him mount and dismount, all of it still belongs to kingship. A hunt displays vitality. A ride displays control. Nothing around him remains simply personal for long. Back inside, the great hall can become a court again. A petitioner stands below the dais. The king hears both sides of a quarrel. The steward or clerk supplies details. A judgment is given, perhaps a fine, perhaps a confirmation, perhaps delay until more testimony arrives. Whatever the answer is public and therefore powerful. At another moment, a clerk kneels beside the table with a charter ready. At another moment, the king presses a seal into warm wax. At another moment, a messenger is waved closer and told to speak quickly. At another moment, a bishop and a noble are both waiting, each pretending patience and each measuring how long the other receives the king's attention. This is what most modern people miss. A king's day is not empty luxury interrupted by a few decisions. It is a chain of visible obligations stretching from the first basin of cold water until the last candle at night. Even eating is not restful. Even walking is observed. Even silence can be interpreted. And the work does not end when the room empties. Because after the dispute comes the memory of the dispute. After the sealed order comes the political consequence of the order. After the dismissed visitor comes the question of whose ally he may be tomorrow. That is why royal life in a castle feels heavy, even when nothing dramatic is happening. Everything is connected to consequences, and the king sits at the center of those connections all day long. From outside, the castle tells the world that the king is safe. From inside, It tells a more difficult truth. He is protected because he is at risk. The doorway of the chamber does not stand unguarded for decoration. The men by the gatehouse do not watch the road because they enjoy the air. The marshal does not track mounts and movement because travel is casual. The steward does not count food and wages because the household is self-sustaining. The chaplain does not keep close because prayer is the only concern in the room. A king is the richest prize in the kingdom. If he falls ill, the realm trembles. If he angers the wrong man, the court tightens. If bad news arrives, the entire household feels it in the pace of footsteps and in the way voices drop. You can see this danger best in small moments. A rider arrives dirty and fast. The guard on the tower sees him first. The gate opens only as much as needed. The horse is taken away quickly. The messenger disappears inside. The solar door closes. Men in the yard pretend not to watch. They watch anyway. Then the Lord, in this case the king, emerges with a different face. No battle has happened at the wall. No trumpet sounds. No army fills the field. And yet the whole castle changes. More guards at doors, more movement near the gatehouse, more private conversation, more late candles, more checking of names, stores, horses, letters, loyalties. That is how danger usually enters royal life, not as spectacle first, but as information. And information is deadly because it demands response. Trust becomes thin in such a world. The servant pouring wine may be loyal, but he still sees what is placed before the king. The knight at the door may be faithful, but he still belongs to family and faction beyond the room. The bishop speaking softly may bless the crown, but he may also resent it. The smiling noble at table may be obedient today and difficult next month. The clerk writing the order may know more of the kingdom's weakness than the people bowing in the hall. Even architecture has limits. A chamber can be secured, a bed can be curtained, a gate can be barred, a portcullis can be tested. But stone does not solve distrust. It only gives distrust walls to move within. And illness is always near. A modern ruler can be isolated, heated, treated, scanned, medicated, and stabilized. A king in 1200 has physicians of some learning, herbs, prayer, rest if he can take it, and the concern of a household that knows how much. Depends on his body remaining strong. Fever, stomach sickness, infection, winter coughs, and bad food are not inconveniences. They are political events waiting to happen. This is why the castle never truly relaxes around him. He is king. He's also a man whose body can fail like any other. By the time you understand all this, you begin to understand the title. Why would you not last a day? Not because someone would stab you at dinner, because almost everything that feels normal to you would be stripped away before noon. You would wake before full light. You would be cold before your feet touched the floor. You would be washed in water colder than you would tolerate by choice. You would dress in layers you did not choose, while other people watched your body turn from a private body into a public one. You would have no true silence, no true solitude, no locked private bathroom, no quick hot meal in peace, no casual clothing, no disappearing into your phone, your thoughts, or a walk by yourself. You would walk on stone stairs in heavy shoes and thick cloth. You would breathe smoke all day. You would eat while people studied your expression. You would sit through disputes that cannot be shrugged off because your answer changes other people's fortunes immediately. You would have to remember names, grievances, alliances, rumors, promises, and faces with far less information than a modern leader takes for granted. And you would have to do all of this without ever looking small. This is the part most people underestimate. A king is not allowed to have an ordinary bad mood. If he looks tired, men read weakness. If he looks indecisive, men begin calculating. If he looks too angry, men fear instability. If he laughs too freely in the wrong company, other men notice. If he delays too long, others interpret. If he speaks too quickly, the words cannot be taken back. Every expression becomes public material. Every habit becomes political. Even your body would revolt against the setting. The wool would itch. The smoke would irritate your throat. The stairs would tire you. The cold chamber would offend every modern instinct for heat and softness. The smell would stay with you. The lack of true privacy would wear at you faster than hunger. The need to remain alert around everyone, attendants, guards, nobles, clergy, messengers, would drain you faster than physical labor. And then there is the deeper burden. You would not only be uncomfortable, you would be responsible. Responsible while tired, responsible while cold, responsible while watched, responsible while uncertain, responsible while other men try to influence you without seeming to do so. Responsible while knowing that a weak choice could cost land, money, loyalty, or peace. This is why medieval kingship is so hard to translate into modern imagination. We see the crown and think luxury. We do not see the cost of never setting it down. The castle protects him. The castle imprisons him. The court serves him. The court watches him. The crown raises him above every other man in the room. And because it raises him, it consumes nearly everything private that remains. By nightfall, the castle feels different again. The loudest business is over. The courtyard's thin. The hall darkens. Torches throw longer shadows. Servants clear the tables. Benches shift. Dogs settle near the remaining warmth. Somewhere in the service buildings, workers lie down fully exhausted. Somewhere on the wall, guards begin another circuit. The king's supper is lighter than the midday meal, but it still comes with order, service, and observation. A final cup, a piece of bread, a smaller dish. Perhaps one last message admitted late, perhaps one last discussion with a clerk or bishop in low light, perhaps simply the sense that tomorrow's burdens are already waiting just beyond the door. He may go to chapel again or hear prayers in private. At night, these prayers feel different. The day has stripped away performance layer by layer, and what remains is mortality. Candlelight on stone, low Latin words, a king kneeling where any man would kneel. Power cannot abolish death. It can only stand in its presence more visibly. Then the chamber is prepared again. The fire is built up as much as fuel allows. Fresh candles are placed, outer garments removed, linen loosened, boots set aside, the bed curtains opened, chamber pot brought near, water left ready for morning, doors secured. One attendant withdraws, another remains a little longer. Outside, the guard takes his place again. The king lies down in the best bed in the castle, and still the room is not truly comfortable. The corners remain cold. The fire will weaken again before dawn. The walls hold the memory of the day's chill. The curtains give privacy, but only partial privacy. Beyond them, the castle continues to exist. Servants, guards, horses, bells, footsteps, doors, wind, distant voices. Sleep is never complete silence. There is always something. A horse moving below, a guard's step on stone, a boot turning on the stair, wind against shutters, a dog barking once in the yard, the crackle of the last good log, the sound of someone passing the chamber door and not stopping. And beneath all of it lies the thought that tomorrow begins the same way. Another basin, Another dressing, another prayer, another meal in public, another line of petitioners, another room in which every face expects something. That was life for a king in a medieval castle in 1200. Not endless feasting, not ease, not freedom, power, yes, the highest power in the land. But power lived inside cold rooms, heavy cloth, public meals, constant judgment, limited trust, and a body that could never fully step outside the role it had been made to carry. From the road, the castle looked magnificent. Inside it, the king still had to endure the day like a man, and that is why you would not last. 1. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this kind of deep historical reconstruction, please subscribe to Walter Reconstructs History. I make videos that bring lost castles, vanished worlds, and decisive turning points back to life in a way that is simple, visual, and grounded in real history. And if there is another king, castle, city, or forgotten world you want to see reconstructed next, leave it in the comments. What should I reconstruct next on Walter Reconstructs History?